LEAD was really for me sort of an invitation to go from the outside to the inside and to think about the civic structures and not just to have it, but to invest in it, to be part of it, and to take an ownership in that.
You're listening to Leading San Diego. I'm Veronica Prandi, Executive Director at Lead San Diego.
And I'm Adrian Quintero from the David's Heart Foundation. Each episode, we sit down with LEAD alumni to explore real stories of community leadership across our region.
And today we are here with Mike Lee, who is the Public Affairs Director at the San Diego County Water Authority and a very recent grad of LEAD Impact 2025. Happy to have you here, Mike.
Oh, I'm so delighted to be part of the worldwide LEAD community.
Yeah, we're excited to have you.
So what is exciting about this conversation is that, Mike's taken his experience from LEAD, which very quickly you graduated last June.
That's right.
And turned it into civic engagement and your relationships and what we're calling a second mountain of leadership.
Absolutely. And happy to unpack that a little bit. LEAD was transformational in my career journey and my personal journey here in the region. And it made a profound impact, and I hope it does for others as well.
So a quick warm-up question. When you walk into a room, how do you show up?
Well, Adrian, I try to read the room first. I mean, this is a key skill that we were taught as reporters. That was my first career. So, if I'm comfortable in the room, I'll go in and probably try to make people laugh a little bit, make an observation, a joke, a comment to kind of just get the room moving a little bit. If I'm not sure what's going on, I'll definitely kind of move into the background a little bit and maybe just ask some questions to try to figure out what direction is up.
I actually remember you doing pretty much just that in LEAD. You're always kind of observing, asking very pointed questions, and obviously coming from background as a reporter makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. But generally, once I get comfortable with folks, then it's a whole different ballgame. So thankfully, I'm comfortable with you too.
I can speak to that.
I
can speak to that. All right. So we're going to talk about your whole journey, your leadership journey, your professional journey. But if we look back at the beginning, if your story had a starting scene, where would it begin?
I mean, I guess we all have different starting places, but in terms of a leadership journey, I guess I'll frame it that way. I would put it in high school. I was new to my high school as a freshman. We had moved into a new district. Many of the kids had been in that district for their whole lives. And so I was very much an outsider and felt very disconnected and awkward, even more so than the regular teenager, right? But by my sophomore year, I started to kind of figure it out a little bit. And I had three buddies. Scott, Pete, and Jeff. And they came to me in my sophomore year and
Scott,
said,
Pete, and Jeff.
Yeah, shout out Scott, Pete, and Jeff. They said, listen, you're going to run for junior class president, and we're going to run for the other offices with you. Are you in? And this was not something that I would have naturally done. I don't have that entrepreneurial component, but I would do it for somebody else.
Yeah.
And so they talked me into it. And I did. And it involved getting out of my comfort zone, doing some public speaking, a little electioneering, and we were successful, all four of us. And it was really pivotal, not only our junior years, but we're also the senior class officers as well. And so I got to do really important things like choose the color for the senior junior prom, right?
Very memorable.
Very memorable. It was pink and seafoam green. It was the 90s. So that was like a huge moment, right? But there was also this opportunity to kind of step into a more formalized leadership role and realize what it's like to work with people depending on you and wanting different things from you and having to navigate differences, right? I learned in that moment that not everybody shares my view of the world, which is shocking as a 17-year-old, right? But you have to learn.
It lays an establishment of how you approach things in the future.
That's right. And so that's the why I go back to that as sort of the starting point. Is it was a starting point of a larger awareness of community, of leadership, and sort of having a vision of self in that space.
So you talked about how when you went to a new school, you were kind of outsider. And I was actually had a similar situation moving to elementary school, knowing absolutely no one and kind of coming in from an outside observer, but also being a journalist, that skill you said you have often had to be an outside
Mhm.
observer.
Yeah.
So when you're approaching a story and you're seeing it and obviously having a background of learning that there are different perspectives, it's like what does it do to your mindset both professionally and personally when you're trained to watch
Mhm.
instead of participate?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that this shows up for me. I mean, the watching part is there's a critical exercise in journalism school where you're you're given a scene, a car crash, and you're posted at four different intersections.
Mhm.
And what you realize is that people at all the different intersections see different accidents, different things, and it's only by sort of putting them together that you have a better view, maybe not the full view, but a
Yeah.
better view of what actually happened. And so I try to bring that forward when, especially whenever I'm in new situations. It's a little bit harder when you're in a situation that you've been in before to keep those fresh eyes,
Mhm.
but I think it's just as important because things are always in flux. We pretend that it's fixed, but everything's always in motion, and we have to have the humility to understand that conditions change, people change, I change.
Wow. I mean, it's pretty
It's a
deep.
powerful
It's
way to think
deep.
about
It's deep.
things. Yeah.
Honestly, I was like, oh, I might try that exercise as
Like,
well.
write that down.
So in 2002, you won the you top honor for in the Society of Professional Journalists for investigative reporting.
Yeah.
What did that era of your career in that like? What did it teach you about trust and the truth and responsibility in your role? Like,
Yeah, that was a profound era in my life. That particular series of stories I remain very proud of. I unearthed a massive fraud and corruption in Washington state's largest organic agriculture operation that was responsible for multiple deaths and unsafe conditions and privateering on government property and just an enormous um, societal
mm,
problem that was happening right underneath everybody's noses in the far corners of Washington state. And it was really personally difficult for me because I am not one to call people out. I respect the differences, and but then I was convinced that there was a real problem that needed to be outed and daylighted, and it made a profound impact in that community. And I like to think the world is a little better, a little safer because of that.
yeah, I believe it is too. I think even your role continuing to push you out of your comfort zone is like kind of alluding back to your story, like always trying to come out of your comfort zone. So that's really cool.
So I want to talk about how you kind of took your previous work as a reporter into how you experienced going through lead.
Mhm.
So when you said you moved from Washington down to San Diego and you thought you had a pretty good understanding of San Diego, but having this perspective and this eye and this curiosity,
Mhm.
like, what was it about that your experience in lead that really changed something for you and how you either saw the community, you saw from a different perspective, not just with the people that you were
Mhm.
experiencing in, but the topics that you were learning about?
Sure. So as journalists, at least as we were trained back in the day, you're an outsider, you're an observer, a critic, a skeptic, and you're not part of the system. And that's by design. The idea was that you don't have attachments or biases
Mhm.
that would kind of skew things unfairly. And so I knew a lot about San Diego from that perspective. Lead was really for me sort of an invitation to go from the outside to the inside and to think about the civic structures, the civic responsibilities, the infrastructure that it takes to have civil society in this region, and not just to have it, but to invest in it, to be part of it, and to take an ownership in that.
I think again, like Lead does an amazing job at getting people into different spaces to
Hmm.
be able to see. And even I'm excited for to be next year when I'm in the
Yeah.
program. I'm excited to hear more about the water authority and
Mhm.
everything. So one of the things that I've heard a lot of alumni talk about are seminars and site visits and different conversations.
Mhm.
Was there one conversation that you remember leaving and switching from being like an observer to more of a participating in the actual, because naturally you're like already going to be an observer no matter what. So coming out of that, what was that like?
Yeah, so there were several. Short story, I when we went to Tijuana,
Mhm.
I was so amazed by the cross-border experience that I immediately booked a flight out of CBX.
Mhm.
My wife and I spent our 30th wedding anniversary in the Yucatan going through the CBX,
Mhm.
and that was like, so let's try this out.
Mhm.
Like, let's be part of this cross-border region, not just an observer of
Mhm.
this cross-border region, right? But maybe the more profound moment was really, I think it was our second or third class of the year, session of the year was at the Copley-Price
Yep.
YMCA in City Heights.
Mhm.
And I walked in there and I was greeted by a very pleasant young person at the desk and walked in and saw the branding inside Copley Price, um, community and belonging, right? That's their watchwords. And I was immediately intrigued because I had been studying those kind of concepts
Mhm.
in graduate school, but I was then faced with sort of the embodiment of those things
Mhm.
in real life. And that facility, that organization was so profound that by the end of the day, I was talking to the executive director and I said, how do I support this?
Mhm.
What do I need to do to get involved? And
And I
that,
remember you
yeah.
telling me afterwards, you're like, "How come I didn't know about this?" You go back to work and you're telling
Mhm.
people about it, and someone's like, "Oh, my kid goes here." Like, "Oh, I'm very involved." You're like, "How? What?"
Yeah, I had never been in a Y before,
Yeah.
to the best of
Mhm.
my knowledge. I didn't know anything about it, and it just wasn't part of my formative years. And so to see it in action, to see the services that the
Mhm.
Y provides, not just in City Heights but countywide, the leadership development that it does with its boards and its executives, and just sort of the lift provided. Truly extraordinary, and so grateful to play some small role in that today
Mhm.
as a board member for Copley Price.
Oh, that's really cool.
Oh
Board
no, the
members.
the the actions that he took after going through Liam, that's one of the reasons why I want to have this conversation is because he really just dove head first
Mhm.
into not just the connections that you've made, but also the network and the people and the work that you were able to do that. And one of those is your leadership action team. They've become like you were texting me about them the other day.
Hmm.
So they've really become like a community for you, not just friends, but professional support that you can reach out to. Like what made that group work for you?
I think having a shared purpose,
Mhm.
you can chat with folks
Mhm.
informally, and they can be nice, and you can be nice,
Mhm.
and you can
Mhm.
go your own
It's
way
surface level
and
there.
at the surface
Yeah.
level.
Mhm.
But when you're like shoulder to shoulder and you're like, okay, we gotta strain to get this done. We have a bigger
Mhm.
vision, a bigger mission, a bigger
Mhm.
purpose
Yeah.
here, and that's to help our nonprofit succeed. How are we going to do that? And that really, like, it creates stress and tension, but in that, it also creates bonds.
Mhm.
And we felt that. I know other leadership action
Yep.
teams
Mhm.
also feel that. So that model, I think, is really effective. And so it produced for our nonprofit, I think, some very good direction and advice. But then on the back end for us, connections that remain. We get together for drinks every quarter or so. Those who can, it's
Mhm.
there's a fluidity to
Yeah.
it, but I count on them as friends and colleagues, advisors, and they've helped me a ton.
But they've also not just helped you, they've connected you because one of your classmates connected you with Point Loma Nazarene to
Yeah.
kind of achieve a lifelong goal of yours,
Mhm.
which is teaching. And then you had another goal, which you said getting involved in the Copley Price, but someone else became your financial advisor. So these are connections that are helping you personally, professionally, and then now you are in turn
Mhm.
sharing your expertise with the next
Mhm.
generation of journalists and communicators as well.
Absolutely. That's the virtuous circle, we call it. That's the theory, is
Yeah.
that everybody reaches back
Mhm.
and provides a hand up to those coming behind. And if enough of us can do that, why it
Mhm.
continues to elevate our community. And to that point, I really, in some ways, will always consider Washington my home. That
Mhm.
is our
Mhm.
state song, Washington my home.
Mhm.
However, San Diego really is, through LEAD, I think San Diego became that place for me in a
Mhm.
more profound way, that I'm deeply invested
Mhm.
in the community here. My wife's family has been here since the 50s,
Mhm.
and now I feel like part of this in a more tangible
Yeah.
way.
That's cool. I think the what you said about reaching back and helping the next
Mhm.
generation of leaders is really cool to me, because as the next set of lead participants, me being a part of
Mhm.
it, what would some advice be that you would give to
Mm.
somebody to really use the network as well as you did, right?
Hmm.
Like somebody like me going in and I don't know what this thing, I've heard about it and there's
Mhm. There's
anticipation, but
anticipation. You don't quite know what to expect.
yeah, how can I set myself up to really utilize the network that is provided by Lead?
Good question. I think some people are naturally adept at this and they don't need any advice.
Mhm.
I'm much more introvertish.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I went into that program with the goal of getting beyond that observational
Mhm.
component, getting beyond the,
Mhm.
getting out of my own way at some level. And so, Adrian, I would encourage you to go in with that desire. I know you will, just from our brief time together, to go in with that desire to really find something meaningful, find those meaningful
Mhm.
connections. And over that 9, 10 months, they will observe or will emerge
Mhm.
um,
And evolve too.
and evolve
Mhm.
100%.
Absolutely. So I want to kind of talk about where you are now in your leadership journey, because when we were talking about this and prepping this, you talked about how what you're calling. I don't know if you established it or you found it. You're calling it's the second mountain
Yeah.
of your professional journey, and where your early goals of building a career and your reputation, like that kind of has faded into the background, and now you're on this new chapter where you talked about supporting the
Hmm.
next generation. What does that look like for you right now?
Yeah, that's an important question, and I think it's important to establish in the beginning that this is directional, not something I've achieved, right? I
Mhm.
think there's always a little danger in coming off like you've arrived,
Yeah.
and I
It's a journey.
haven't.
It's
It
a
is
journey.
it is a journey, and that's
Yeah.
why I love this mountain metaphor. I wish I would have thought it up. I did not.
Mhm.
There's a book by a guy, theorist and sort of philosopher, cultural philosopher named David Brooks, called The Second
Mhm.
Mountain.
Mhm.
Other people have described this different ways, but I'm a pretty avid outdoors guy,
Mhm.
hiker, so I love this mountain analogy. And the first mountain of life is really ego driven. And I don't mean that pejoratively. I mean, like, we're establishing ourselves,
Mhm.
our identity,
Mhm.
who we are, what we can achieve in the world. But it is mostly inward focused. Not for everybody, but for most folks. That second mountain moves you from independence to interdependence. It moves you
Mhm.
from transactional
Mhm.
to relational. It moves you from status to significance.
Mhm.
That's a huge change, right? And so by the time you get to my age, you ought to be looking at what's that second mountain?
Mhm.
How do I really provide impact and significance? Um, and again, help those
Mhm.
coming along after. I'm not going to be here forever. We're all renters at
Mhm.
some level, right? And we need to take care of the place so that the people coming along behind us have a community, have infrastructure, both
Mhm.
physical infrastructure and social, to continue this thing we call San Diego.
Mhm.
There are some students that I worked with when I was back at SDSU, and one of their mottos that they were looking at as far as their leadership was not just like leaving your legacy, because that's
Mm,
like,
Mhm.
here's my legacy, walking away. It's living it. It's like you
Living
want
it.
to live that legacy and go on that journey as it continues.
Yeah.
100%.
And we use that kind of common, like that infrastructure language, common ground type of thing a lot in our community as well. And every one of, our programs, especially David's Harp, as a young person comes up in the program, what they do is really building the next infrastructure for
Mhm.
the next kid to come. And so what you're talking about is really finding those that common ground infrastructure in a world right now that's so people come in polarized sometimes.
Mhm.
What are you doing, Mike? Like what is it like for you to help build common ground within people? Like what is that like for you and I guess in your role and perfect yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, honestly, I think a lot of it is um, listening, showing up with an attitude of curiosity rather
Mm,
than certainty. I mean, that's this sort of polarization that I think we have right now is a lot of people are really certain about what's right and wrong and good and bad and who's on what
mhm,
side. And so I try, and I'm not perfect at it, but I try to show up with that humility that asks questions, that has curiosity about who are you? Because I fundamentally believe that you are making the best choices and the best decisions that you
mm,
can given your life experience
Mhm.
and what you know about the world. So, what is that? And just coming in with that rather than who I am and what's right, it just changes the dynamic.
mm. Yeah, it's a great perspective, like a great way to show up with that mentality of just being able to listen
And
and
being curious.
intentionally as well.
Intentionally and
Yeah.
And
curious,
then
yeah.
I think being part of organizations where that is possible. And
Yes.
that's why I
Mhm,
love the why. It is a space of belonging that is for everybody in the community. And it is a common ground.
mhm,
It's for everyone. And we need to preserve those places, especially as our digital worlds tear us
Mhm.
apart
mhm,
and reinforce our biases and
mhm,
reinforce our certainty, right? We need to have those places where
mhm.
we're rubbing up against other people, not unlike I was doing, in high school when I realized, oh, wait, not
Not
everybody
everyone
Mhm.
thinks
sees
the
the
same,
world the
sees
way
the
I
same,
do.
yep.
How are we going to navigate this?
So when you are approaching these new spaces, like you joined the WISE advisory
Yeah.
board, you're instructing, it's like you're taking this like approach to a humble curiosity, and saying yes to
Yeah.
being in those spaces and asking those questions. What makes you say yes to wanting to be in those spaces?
I suppose it's that I've learned that when you show up, interesting things happen and mostly good things happen. Going back to, 30 years ago in college, a profound experience. This was part of a journalism class that I took, was going to a worship service in a black church in downtown Tacoma, Washington.
Mm,
And it's not a space I'd ever been
Mhm.
to.
mhm,
And realizing that I had always been in spaces where I was the majority, and what is that like to
mhm,
be the other and different? And and so I've had enough of those experiences in my life that that helps me want to keep doing that
Yeah.
and press a little bit further on the second mountain.
mhm,
When we look back at your story, you've had a few phases and you're on that second mountain. What has it taught you about your leadership and kind of
Oh.
what you're hoping to achieve with again your approach?
Well, I'll tell you a mountain story.
Okay.
And this is a literal mountain, and it's not figurative. Part of my graduate program at Gonzaga University, shout out to the Zags, was a class where on hardiness and
mhm,
resilience. How do we, stay strong when things get hard, and
mhm,
what does that look like? And we literally at the end of this capstone class met on a mountain, Mount Adams, 12,000 plus feet in the Cascade Range,
mhm,
and with our equivalent of a leadership action team, we climbed that mountain together with ice axes and crampons starting at about 2 a.m., making our way up by headlamp.
That's an incredible
It
experience.
was
mhm,
Yeah.
incredible, but here's what's more incredible, and I mean, the views, yes,
mhm,
it was exhilarating, but as leaders, we are all the people there expect to be in front. They expect to be in the
Mhm.
lead, and
mhm,
not everybody can be, right? And I found on that journey that there was a moment due to altitude, I'll call it altitude sickness, but just
mhm,
not feeling well, where I was the weak link in my group. That is not somewhere that I'm used to being.
Hmm.
And being the recipient of that care and my team literally slowing down for me, giving me a moment, helping me, showing that care and concern. Like, like at first I was sort of ashamed of it, and then I was like, no, wait, this is the ball game. This is how teams are supposed to work. You're
Mhm.
supposed to pick up somebody else, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not always
Balance the
you,
strengths
Mhm.
and weaknesses.
right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's my second mountain, I suppose.
So how did you go from being a reporter, being in Washington, coming down here to San Diego and being with the Water Authority?
Well, it was mostly due to the fact that my wife's family is from North County,
Hmm.
and we had an opportunity 20 plus years ago when her grandmother was unable to take care of the original ranch house on the avocado grove there in Fallbrook, that we were able to buy that house from her, and it just kind of all worked out. Our intention was always to come back, and so very grateful for the chance to then work at the Union Tribune for 7 or 8 years. And so it was in 2012 then that I figured that to continue my career development as a journalist, I was going to probably need to move to the East Coast, or I could do something else. And I have always covered water, written about water. I had many years of experience. And so, I applied at the Water Authority, and have worked various roles in outreach ever since. And it's been a highly rewarding career. I don't regret it for a second.
That's really
Interesting
cool. Yeah,
transitions.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I would never expect like that
Yeah.
would be the second, I guess,
Second
the
round.
second mountain. That's cool.
Yeah, there are a lot of transferable
Yeah.
skills. So there's the
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
knowledge
sure.
Yeah.
base because I had been covering water issues. I wasn't, water is surprisingly
Yeah.
complex and convoluted and confusing. And so having the technical background, or I'll call it semi technical because there are engineers who are actually technical, but semi technical background, knowing the lingo, and then also being in a communication space
Yeah.
helped me to transition into another communication
Yeah, I mean,
space.
observing for a long
Yep.
time
Yep.
and then writing about it,
Hmm.
you're gonna have to know it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
gonna have to know it deeper. And so, from your vantage point in water and public affairs, what do you want listeners to understand about the role of water security in San
Mm.
Diego?
Yeah. Critical question. Let's do a new podcast just about that, because I
I mean,
mean,
water is life. You need it.
water is
Yes,
life.
true.
From the very beginning of San Diego, before it was San Diego County, it has been the search for safe and reliable water supplies, whether you're talking about the native populations, whether you're talking about the European explorers, the era of the missions. It's always been about that safe and reliable water supplies. So we have not had enough local water in
Hmm.
San Diego County to sustain our needs since 1946.
Wow.
It's a really long time. So everything since then, 1946, depends on ingenuity and engineering and deals that we have created to bring that water in. And I'm proud and thankful to say that at this point in our region's history, we actually have enough secure water for San Diego County that we're starting to be able to transfer that, offload that to communities like Riverside County that need more water security. And in turn, we're able to reduce the rate impacts on San Diegans who have paid for these investments, but now we're seeing some returns on their investments in the hundreds of millions of dollars over the coming years. So it's really an inflection point right now for San Diego County water, and it's wonderful to be able to be part of that and tell
Mhm.
Yeah.
that story.
What do
It
you?
feels
I'm
like a
sorry.
mountaintop moment
Yeah.
kind of for you guys. Like the way you're explaining it, that's a really big climb to be able to do
Yeah.
something like that. So
And what do you think people take for granted about our at least our ability in our community? Because I know
Yeah,
there are stories elsewhere, but that
sure.
we take for granted for getting that safe and reliable water where we can turn on the tap and get the water.
Yeah, I think a big part of the, we'll call it problem, is that the infrastructure is almost entirely invisible. You don't see it. If the water system was like your road, you would have a better is
You
visible
see
every
it. Yep.
day,
Mhm.
and
Yep. Out of
you're
sight, out
like,
of mind.
yep.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of the challenge that we face, and that's why we do have programs to bring people behind the scenes and show them the investments that we've made and what it takes. I'm
Mm.
really proud to say we're going to have one of our large diameter pipes. It's about 60 inches, 5+ feet in diameter, give or take. It's going to be at the San Diego County Fair this year. So you can walk through the pipeline if
Okay,
you
I've
want
seen
to.
those on the side of the
That's
road when
cool.
they are doing construction. I've always wanted to walk through, so I will be there.
I don't think you've seen pipe as
This
big as
I'm
we're
there.
going to have
I'm
there.
there.
You might have, but I doubt it because our aqueduct system is very rarely on the side of a road.
Okay, then maybe there's other pipes that I've seen. But when we talk about kind of like your kind of how you approach the work that you do with the water
Mhm.
authority and how you see it in the community and the conversations that you're having, at least now being out there with
Yeah.
as big as a pipe we're going to have at Del Mar Fair. What about your lead experience? How has that kind of shaped the way that you're now approaching the work that you're doing in the community now?
Well, I think it's just with greater awareness of all the sectors of the community that intersect with our product, if you
Mm-hmm.
will, and that are impacted by the choices that we make. And again, having some humility in the face of that, because these investments have come at a big cost, and we recognize that. But they also come with a big benefit, and we recognize that. So how do we make sure that kind of going forward strategically, we're positioning this county in a way that balances reliability and affordability, taking in all of those business sectors and kind of components of our society from the most able to pay to the least able to pay. And that's where I think LEAD just sort of refreshed my connection with the larger community.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mike, for caring about the next generation of leaders because with your ideas for this
Mm-hmm.
podcast, I'm here as a
Yep.
co-host.
Yep.
So
Yep.
thank you for
Absolutely.
that. I
That's
really
what it's all
appreciate it.
about.
Yeah, one thing that I'm taking away is a reflection on what does my second mountain look
Yeah.
like and what can I do to better the infrastructure for the next generation of young leaders
Yeah.
in the
Absolutely.
community of San Diego.
I think
So
that's a good thought for all of us.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a delightful conversation, and I wish you well in your lead podcast experience. I'll be listening every week.
Thanks, Mike.
thank you.
Well, you are listening to Leading San Diego, produced in partnership with the David Tarp Foundation. Thanks for listening.